Welcome to the Elite FTS Table Talk Podcast with your host, Dave Tate.
So we're live? Okay. Today I'm live with Tony Montgomery. I'm still trying to figure out how to do these introductions, so I'm going to try this one a little bit different. We're going to do this by bullet points.
All right.
Okay? So it doesn't have to be in any specific order.
Okay.
So your background, bullet point number one.
Bullet point number one, born and raised in Florida. Played sports all throughout, mostly football, a little bit of rugby. And then after that, bullet point number two, military. Didn't have anything else going on in my life. Was like, need to do something, need to figure things out. What better way to do that than to join the military? And then bullet point three, got out, went to college, studied exercise science at Florida Atlantic University, opened up a gym, all in Florida, and then from there, sold the gym, started my traveling, and visiting other cities within the country. So then that moved to Denver for a couple years, and then moved out to California for a couple years, trained with Dan Green for about a year and a half, and then moved up north to train with Jesse Burdick for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then from there moved to Portland, Oregon, trained with Chris Duffin for about a year, and now I have my own gym out there in Portland, Oregon. And that's about quick, like down and dirty synopsis of where I've been and where I've gone and where I'm at now.
And you got a podcast.
Yeah, I have a podcast called Beyond the Platform.
And you actually compete.
I do compete, yes.
In powerlifting?
In powerlifting right now, I've done strongman. I've done a few CrossFit competitions, and I've done some endurance racing as well.
Where, I don't want to say where's your rank now because it's 2019, so what's been your best rank in powerlifting? Using like an open powerlifting based upon total.
Open powerlifting, after the U.S. Open a couple years ago, I was ranked 8th, I believe, 8th or 10th, somewhere around there. I don't pay too much attention. If it's not number one, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So wherever it lands is where it lands.
Yeah.
I just know I need to get better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course. But you can manipulate sometimes enough to get yourself up to number one if you go to the Masters and you filter it down. And
compete January 1st and
no
one else shows up.
Yeah, filter the date, filter, by squat, by total, by Wilks, by Glossprinter. I mean, trust me, I've seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Especially on the sponsor apps that we're getting out.
None of that matters. It's just your total.
It's your total.
That's what I've always been told, and that's what I've always gone after. Whether you're a super heavyweight, 308, I compare myself to the best, and that's all that matters to me.
Where do you see your future competitive endeavors, in powerlifting or in strongman? Or
powerlifting for sure. If I have a longer off season, I'll diet down and do a bodybuilding show, but that's just typical of the programming and where things take me. Anyways, I usually diet after competitions. If I don't have a show coming up, competition, then I'll extend the diet and do some bodybuilding, just something to push mentally a little bit further. But powerlifting is the main goal for the next foreseeable future, 5 to 6 years, or unless I retire myself out with some, I don't know, catastrophic injury or meltdown or something.
Yeah, the sport retires you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what that one's called. So you've had 2 gyms.
Yeah.
Okay. So the one in Florida and the one that you have now. Now, the one that you have now, what is the demographic? Explain to me a little bit about what the membership profile is. Is it fully open? Is it?
Yeah, it's a 24/7 gym that's fully open to the public. It is a niche demographic of a strength community in Portland, Oregon. If anybody is familiar with Portland, Oregon, strength is not an adjective I would use to describe the area. So we're introducing the concept of the benefits of strength, the benefits of powerlifting to a community that's really not known for that. And so far, so good. Being able to build people up, introduce them to the sport of powerlifting. We have a lot of newcomers, and then we have some of the best lifters in the world that train at our gym. So it's a nice wide variety, but it is 24/7. We do offer different tiers. So some of the tiers we provide programming, and we also provide drop-in hours where myself or my wife's there, and we'll do some coaching with the people that pay for the advanced memberships. We'll help them out with technique. We'll help them out with setting up some of the stuff that we have for them. So that's a little bit more of the advanced profile that we have at the gym. So, and then we have an individual programming as well, and that's more of a dualistic online component, along with when they're there during our drop-in hours, they can also get the coaching as well, but everything's individualized for them.
All right, with this online component, for them to have that online component that you're talking about, do they have to be able to drop in? Or do you do straight?
We do online coaching as well, yeah.
Okay.
But within the vicinity of the gym,
yes,
yeah, it's individualized with the component of weekly check-ins if we don't get to see them, of sending us videos and going over the videos and critiquing form through that.
And this is with powerlifting and with Gen Pop and just weight loss,
everything.
Okay, so the full
gamut, but it's definitely set up to where it's a strength training gym.
Okay.
So that's typically what we get. That's the majority of our people. I would say maybe 80% of them compete.
80% compete?
Mm-hmm. We have about 120 members now, and it's not a requirement to compete, but they just get into that environment. They're training with their friends, and everyone's competing, so they just join along.
That leads into my next question, which makes, I'm trying to figure out how, because you have the tiers and they're paying to be there, then you have your own training. So how do you determine who your training partners are going to be, or is there a group set up? Then if that group's set up, are they like a different tier, or you see what I'm saying?
No, yeah.
It can get real weird. And the only reason I'm asking is I know other gym owners that have kind of been in that same type of predicament.
Yeah.
That it's like, oh shit, now these guys are my training partners, and they think they need to train free. Some people do, some people don't, but then they stop being your training partner.
Right. Yeah.
So how do you kind of walk that line, or do you just train alone?
There is a gray area that we try to walk, but it is our gym, it is our reputation. So if there are people in there that aren't paying for the advanced training and their technique is awful, we try to help them out as much as we can without neglecting the people that are paying the extra money. Myself, I train with my wife, and I train with my training partner, Sean Doyle, and anyone's welcome to train with us. No one does, for the most part. We usually train around noon because Sean has a crazy schedule. He works 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. So it's like whenever he wants to train is when we train. Noon doesn't really lend itself to having a lot of people coming into the gym, which is good for me because once I'm there, I try to put on my athlete hat, and people know that if I'm training, that's probably not the best time to ask me questions.
Yeah.
But if someone new comes into the gym, I'll be able to kind of show them around a little bit. As powerlifters, we don't really rush our sets, so we have a little bit of free time. But we've had training partners come in and out. On Sundays, we have a nice little group come in and do squats, and it's myself and Sean Doyle, Chris Bridgeford, and then his crew. So we have some really high-level lifters coming in and training, but it's just not a everyday thing. But myself and Sean, we've been training together for a little bit over 3 years now.
Okay. With the training component, you don't have a lot of clients throughout the lunchtime hours?
No.
So where does the majority fall? In the early morning and after work?
Yeah, 5 p.m.
So it's after work. So what about early morning?
Early morning we have some, but those hours aren't really available for us to be there. So that's just that's where it's the 24/7. It's kind of come at your discretion. If people are doing our group programming, they're really just paying for programming. We do have a private Facebook page that they can post videos to get critiqued and stuff, but mostly they're just paying for the programming at that point.
Okay. So let's fall back now into the military. I think the way that you answered this is like, well, I didn't have anything else better to do.
Yeah.
So I decided to go into the military. So what was the deciding factor for that? there had to be something more than I didn't have anything better to do.
You'd be surprised. 9/11 happened when I was probably a freshman, sophomore, if I remember. And that really wasn't something that like made me want to be super patriotic and like I got to join. It did hit close to home, but it wasn't something that drew me to the military. It was literally, I got done with high school. I didn't have a plan to go to college. I had a kid I needed to support, and I was like, what's the best way to do this? What's the adult thing to do that can kind of get my life on track but also allow me to provide? And that was the door that opened. My uncle was a Marine, and I've always respected him, and I've always respected the Marine Corps. So it was just kind of a thing to really allow myself to focus on building my life and getting everything on track. I knew the benefits of the discipline and the benefits of being in the military and what it could do for my life. So it was definitely more of a situation where I didn't have a lot of guidance. I didn't have a lot of internal drive to become a better person, and I kind of needed that forced upon me. And the military was definitely the only route that I could think of as 18, that I can do. And it was literally, school ended, I went to the recruiter's office. Hey, when can I join? Oh, we can ship you out in like a couple weeks. I was like, cool, sign me up. Went home, told my parents, and they were like, what? Like, yeah. So I didn't even run it by them or anything. It's just something that I knew I needed to do as a man and as a person to really get my life in order.
So you had enough self-awareness at a young age to be able to know that you had to do something.
Oh yeah, I knew I needed to do more in my life. I just didn't know what that was at the time, and I needed some type of guidance. And I couldn't get that through a community college. I couldn't get that through any of the jobs that I had. So that was just my best option in my mind.
Where's that awareness come from? Where did it come from?
I just always kind of had that idea that I wanted to do more with my life. Whether or not I actually knew what that was, I couldn't tell you, but yeah. I just knew that I felt like I was always put on this earth to do more and be more. And that's just kind of how it's always been, whether it was in sports. I gave it everything I had. I always tried to become better. I was reading books. First book I ever read about like training and nutrition was Bill Romanowski's book. And if you ever read that book, it was amazing. As a 16-year-old, it was like that book was everything to me. And just from there, I always wanted to be the best at whatever I was doing. And without actually knowing what I was doing, I needed that guidance. And I knew that being the best required, getting that push, getting that drive, getting that discipline. I just couldn't figure it out how to do it on my own. And I knew the Marines were the best from what everyone has told me. Yeah. And I know they're the hardest as far as like the boot camps go. And they're just known for being the first to attack, the first to defend. So that's just what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the best with them.
A few of the questions that were on the list that I saw and that I've personally been asked, being a non-military person, which I don't quite understand, but thus the world of social media.
Yes,
is you were playing football and you were in sports, but did you have to train before? I mean, basically you only knew there was only 2 weeks, so you were already kind of in shape before you went in.
Oh, absolutely not.
No, so not. No. Okay, cool. So did you train before you went in to try to prepare at all?
No.
Would you suggest, unless somebody's, really, really, really out of shape, that they actually try to do that, or just say, fuck it, let the Marines do what the Marines do, and just, you kind of get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So they do have standards. Like, you have to meet certain standards. I had to pass the PFT because I was a bigger person. I'm always considered overweight in the military. So I have to have a first-class PFT. So I had to do that first, and that gave me a waiver to get in. So I was fit enough to pass that. If you're not fit enough to pass that, then yeah, you can join their MEPS program, and they'll get you in shape through the reserve unit, or get in shape on your own. But it depends on what you're trying to do within the military. So if you're trying to become a special forces operator or trying to do pararescue or some job that requires a high demand of resilience and a high demand of ability to push yourself and be in shape, then there's definitely a time that I would take to get in shape. Because most of the drops that happen in those units, the special forces and stuff, are usually injury drops. They tend to not drop people for being poor performers unless you're really, really bad and you don't meet the time requirements. But typically people get dropped because of stress fractures, injuries, and stuff like that. So you want to work on building that type of resilience up through ruck marches, through low impact cardio, just things that you're not used to doing. And then that'll kind of get you through that. And then beyond that, you just have to know that it's a game that they play. They're trying to break you down, and they'll do a really good job of it. And if you're not in shape, you'll get in shape, because if you're not, you're the weak link, and they do their best to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and the weak link becomes a stronger link over time. So that's really what it was for me. I was able to pass the PFT, and then from there, I was in enough shape. I think I lost like 35 pounds through boot camp, which is 3 months. So I wasn't in the best shape.
Yeah.
But I've always had a high work capacity. I don't know why, but I've always been able to run pretty well, even as a bigger person, and that kind of helped me along the way.
So the concern that always went through my mind when I would be asked that was if they're in fairly decent shape, kind of what you're talking about, and then they spend 8 weeks trying to prepare for it, and then they end up, beating their knees up a little bit, beating their feet up a little bit, then they're going to go in at a disadvantage because their feet and knees are going to get beat up anyhow. So, and that's where I never really answered, because my answer would be, dude, if you're in halfway decent shape, just don't do a damn thing except get really healthy.
Yeah.
and go in there knowing you're going to get broken down.
That's the thing, is you just have to mentally know that they're trying to break you down, and no matter what, as long as you don't quit, you'll be fine. Like, you could be the slowest runner out of the group. As long as you can run within their parameters, what the slowest runner is, then you're fine, as long as you don't quit.
From that standpoint, was it harder than what you expected, or a little easier than what you expected?
It was right along what I expected. I treated it like it was a job, so to speak. So I didn't take anything that they did too seriously. I was in charge of my boot camp class pretty much throughout the whole entirety. So that probably made things a little bit easier. As a leader, I've been told I'm a natural leader. I don't know if I am or not. Yeah. But I was always put in charge of things. So being able to guide and lead the troops made it a lot easier for me, because I was able to not really think about myself and what I was going through, but always thinking about what everyone else was doing, so that we could be perfect, so that we don't get in trouble, so that we don't have to do extra stuff.
Yeah.
So that made the time fly by a lot more. But it was just a bunch of games, and making sure that you're always tired, you're always hungry, you're always running around. But at the end of the day, you knew you were going to get 3 meals in, you knew you were going to get some sleep in. You just had to survive the rest of the stuff.
Now, how did you advance throughout your time in the Marines?
As far as like outside
what did you do, as a Marine?
As a Marine, I was stationed with 2nd Recon Battalion as a parachute rigger, and so we did that. I was helping with parachute operations and packing parachutes and doing that type of stuff. And then when we went overseas, I was with the QRF team, which is the Quick Reaction Force, and we were the group that if things weren't going as planned with other missions, we were called in for like backup. And we also ran missions ourselves out in Iraq, whether they be surveillance or roadblocks to stop and check things, or raids or sniper missions, like things like that we did. But that was kind of the premise of, I just stayed with 2nd Recon the whole time out in North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, and just did my job. And it was required that we stay in shape, and that was really it. It was fairly easy, to be quite honest with you, because being with Recon Battalion, it was perfect for me, because they're the best at what they do, and that's always what I wanted to do. So I had a lot of respect for those guys, and the real requirement was like be in shape first, and then work was second.
Yeah.
So whenever we were like back on the base, and then obviously when we were working up, priority was learning the ops, learning the missions, learning the, stuff that we had to do as a unit, getting cohesive, building that teamwork and stuff like that. But on a day-to-day, it was, wake up, go PT, have breakfast, get to work around 9, do our job till about noon, go eat lunch, PT, get back around 3, and then from there, work from 3 to 5, and then you're off. So it was fairly 9 to 5 job, pretty easy going, laid back, which is, any special forces unit is going to be a little bit more laid back because the demand of the job is a lot more stressful. So I don't know how I would have done being with a regular Marine unit where they're a little bit more strict and they're a little bit more regimented in the small nuances that, don't really matter. Like, is your bed crease, 40 degrees, where it's like, your bed's made, that's good enough. Your room's clean, you don't have to go and white glove it all the time. Small things where we didn't have to deal with that stuff. We were able to focus on doing our job and staying in shape.
Some of the other special forces that I've spoken to, and it's not many, have kind of defined it as, 80% of the time is pretty much just boring, kicked back, stupid shit, work, until the 20% happens.
Yep.
And then what everybody thinks that the whole job is that 20%.
Oh yeah.
Where
they watch way too many movies.
Yeah, where the job is actually boring as hell until it's not.
Yeah.
Then it's not.
Yeah, especially for operators, because they don't really need to do their job until they need to do their job, and that's usually we have like a 6-month workup, and that's when you start to really fine-tune your skills and get everything going and start to build, SOPs and things like that to make sure that the team's all on the same page. But yeah, the rest of the time it's just kind of laid back, do some weapon stuff here and there, do some field stuff here and there, and then just have fun, stay in shape, and, don't get in trouble.
Did you know going in that you were going to be 4 years and out, or did you ever think that you would try to make a career of it?
No, I never wanted it to be a career. And then it was one of those things where you don't appreciate it while you're in, but then when you get out, you appreciate all the things that it's done for you. So I couldn't wait to get out. I was ready to go. I was ready to start. I knew what I wanted to do with my life, and I was ready to get it going and get it started and not really waste any more time. I already felt like I was behind because I was 21, 22, where most freshmen are like 18 getting going. So I already felt like I was a little bit behind, so I was ready to get out and get things rolling.
So from there, it was straight into college?
Straight into college, yeah. Okay. Full like 16, 20 credit hours just to try to graduate as fast as possible. Spring, summer, fall, just nonstop getting it done.
How many, did it 3 years then?
It was like 2.5, 3 years.
2.5 years?
Yeah.
Do you think you would have been able to do that straight out of high school, or the military?
Oh, not even close. Yeah, okay. Military set the tone for sure. Okay. That discipline and that regiment of getting up early, having a plan of action for the day, that's prepared me for life outside of the military in so many ways. I still do that to this day. I get up around 4:30 a.m. I know exactly what I'm going to do that day. It's very regimented, it's very planned, and I make sure that I do the hard tasks first. That way when it comes down to later at night when you don't want to do anything, you just have the easy stuff left to do. But every day is planned out. Every day I get up at 4:30, whether it's the weekend or whether it's a Monday, and I just start every day like it's a new day to learn and grow and become a better person. And I couldn't think about starting it like later. I feel like I would be behind.
I want to kind of pivot off here for a second because I want to expand on this a little bit because I think this is a big takeaway. Do you still do that now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So so when you wake up in the morning or the night before, I would assume, you're laying out 3 to 5 things.
Yeah.
And out of those 3 to 5 things, there's a couple that are very important, that they are must-dos that have to get done.
Yeah.
All right. So, for me, it's, I do the same thing. So it's my notebook, so there's a couple of things in my notebook which are they're key priority. It's getting done no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's first focus. And then there may be 50 other things underneath it, which is just a bunch of administrative, stupid type of bullshit.
Yeah.
Where I think how many do you put down? As far as main, do you go with, I've heard some people that will just stick with 1, other ones that say you should never exceed 3. I kind of think it depends upon what the task is.
Right.
But I try to not exceed like 5 at the very most.
Yeah. Well, because I have a lot going on with school and 3 different businesses, that I try to focus on one thing of each of those and get it done. And usually my priority right now is school, so that's always the first concern. So I'll make sure that I'm doing either some type of paper, some type of study, and some type of homework first thing in the morning. Well, first thing in the morning, I always get up and read some type of strength and conditioning, some type of nutrition book. I do that for about an hour. Then I get going with the important tasks before school and stuff. And usually it's kind of setting myself up for what I'm going to do within the businesses that day to make it grow. And whether that be starting to write an article, programs for my clients, what I'm going to post on Instagram, social media stuff like that. But unfortunately, like, my biggest priority is still training that day, which is probably not the best thing for a business owner. But as an athlete, I try to keep my athlete hat on as much as I can. And like, what are we training that day, and making sure that I focus on that too.
I'll run with that because, powerlifting was my first priority from 82 until 2004. There was a lot of areas I fucked up, because of that. The only one that I really regret is, how I treated my wife during certain periods of time during that time frame.
Yeah.
And everything else was kind of in slow-mo, so it could be maybe I should have went into the military, to be able to help with that.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good conversation to have because we both know a lot of people that are going to put bodybuilding or powerlifting or, strongman or whatever their strength sport is that number one priority.
Right.
But then instead of, going to school and, working their craft or whatever it is, they still might do it, but then they just go in slow mode on that, where they really don't have to because you're only training, how many hours per week.
Right.
And there's still so many other open hours. So, you're an example of somebody that, can validate what I'm talking about is you don't have to put the whole rest of your life on hold.
Yes.
I still went to college, while I was competing and, developed my craft or trade or whatever you want to call it. While I was there, I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
I did it at a slower pace, but made sure something was being done. Whereas, like I said, we know many people that just aren't doing anything.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm competing. I'm going to find, the easiest job that I can find. Or on the flip side, I'm going to see if I can pick up a few online clients, that covers just enough to pay for my entry fees, travels, and drugs,
right?
Or whatever it is. And then once I hit that, so there's shitty online coaches, which kind of ruin it for the ones that are out there. But I don't think they last very long. And I'm going to just assume that the reason for that again extends down to the military discipline. But if somebody doesn't have the military discipline, it really falls back into time management.
Yeah.
So what would you say is some of your time management skills to be able to still put training, as one of your highest priorities and still be able to get other shit done?
Yeah. One of the first books I ever read about time management was a Dan Kennedy book. And I think it was like No BS to Time Management or something. And that really helped set the tone because it made me do things in such a small, minute way that you couldn't mess it up. So it was literally wake up. What am I doing the moment I wake up? And every like 10-minute intervals, after that.
Oh, so you did an audit of yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fucked up, ain't it?
Yeah. Did that for like 6 months, Yeah. That way it built that consistency.
You do realize most people might do it for like a month?
Yeah, that's most people.
You're a Marine.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be good at what I did unless I took it to the extreme. But that's just what it took. It took me 6 months to get so comfortable with it that I didn't have to do it to that micromanagement level anymore. And that's really what it takes is just figuring out a way that works best for you in your day-to-day and give yourself markers of improvement, right? So I had, not only did I have daily tasks, but I had weekly tasks that I wanted to complete. Mm-hmm. And as long as those weekly tasks kept getting complete at the level that I wanted it to, then I was making that progress, and I set myself up for success each and every time by having the daily stuff to lay out to get it done. And I just did that consistently until it became a habit. And that's really what discipline comes down to, is like building those habits. Mm-hmm. You just got to find what works best for you. That worked best for me. It was like I read it and I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense, And one of the other things too that helps with time management a lot is just setting time to answer social media and answer emails and not ever looking at it again unless it's that desired time. So it'd be, for me, it'd be first thing when I woke up, I would answer emails, and then I wouldn't answer them again until like 5 o'clock at night. And anything in between there, if I ever picked up my phone, it was just a waste of time. So I couldn't do that. I don't have enough free time to waste it. And I think if people start to write down what they do on a day-to-day, they'll realize how much free time they're wasting. And then you just fill that void of wasted time with stuff that's actually going to progress you toward your goals. And that would be, figuring out your goals first, figuring out what you want to do with your life. And for me, that was just a lot of self-reflection, reading a lot of books on Buddhism and learning more about yourself and more self-actualization, becoming a better person, becoming who you are on the inside, and figuring that out before you can start to externally show what you're capable of. So that helped me out a lot. That built a lot of self-confidence for me to rely on myself. And that's what I've always done. I've never had a real job. Once I got out of the military, I've never worked for anyone for an extended period of time, maybe longer than a month, because I always wanted to rely on myself. That way I had no excuses for failure. If I always rely on myself, then I know that I'll be successful. And didn't give myself an out for that, didn't give myself a reason to make excuses. I was like, it's on me, and that's all that matters, and that's what I prefer.
Let's fall back onto your trying to find yourself. You said the Buddhism and all the other kind of stuff, and the process of, it's actually a process of self-actualization, trying to figure out kind of what you're here for, what we're here for, what we're here to do. For those listening, I think that's one of those things, and you kind of see it through the seminars and stuff like that. That's the one void that a lot of people really struggle with. Is they just don't know. And I know going into college, I knew what I wanted to do, but everybody else was telling me what I should be doing.
Right.
Because there wasn't a career path for what I really wanted to do. And it's like you got to listen more to the voice in your head instead of other people's voice. And then once you lock into that voice in your head and you know what you want, and then the other people's voices just kind of get silent.
Yeah.
Then the critics are no longer there.
Right.
Or if they are, you don't even realize it because you're too busy doing other shit.
Yeah.
How, outside of just reading, how did you go about that? What would you advise somebody that's trying to figure out what they want to do?
Yeah, I was lucky in that regard. Like when I was in the military, when I was overseas in Iraq, we had to study things like the Quran and stuff like that. And I was married at the time to a family that was very high level Christian, end of time, revelations. They had their own church, so I was very deep into that and my belief and faith in Christianity. And then when I went overseas, we studied the Quran and stuff to learn the culture. And there's so many similarities to both theologies and any theology in and of itself. So to me, that made me start to question things. And then that's how I started to become more self-actualized, was being able to question my beliefs. And if I could continue to question them and come back to them, then I knew they were rock solid. But if I can question them, and then that made me start to shake my belief of that system and then continue to question it, then I had to find other stuff to believe in. And that's kind of what led me along that path of like self-actualization, was seeing people in Iraq, seeing what they're going through, seeing a third world country, watching your friends get killed, and knowing that they're not going to be able to come back home to see their family, to see their loved ones, puts things into perspective and makes you really think about what you're going to do with your life and who you want to become, not only for yourself, but for the people that are giving their lives for you. And you have a lot of free time in Iraq to think about those things. And, whenever you're spending 7 days in a house and, 12 hours on shift, and you have nothing but time to think about what you want out of life and what you want to get out of it. And I think having that free time to be in my own head, which a lot of people don't like to do. A lot of people have free time. They don't like to be with themselves. They'll pick up their phone. They'll do something else, that way they don't have to figure out who they are. Because when you figure out what you're capable of and what you can actually do, it's scary, because that one of the things that I look into now is Jordan Peterson talks about it all the time. It's like, you think about the Nazis, you think about the Gulag Archipelago, you think about reading books like Man's Search for Meaning, and you realize what the human body's capable of, what the mind's capable of. And you got to understand that if put in that situation, 99% of the people would do the same thing. Most of us would become Nazis and, and do the things, do the death camp stuff, And once you're able to realize what you're capable of, evil stuff in your life, then it really makes you harness that and not ever want to, experience that. And it makes you really start to think about the good in life and what you can do and what your purpose is. And being able to think about things constantly and challenge things and rationalize things in my head allows me to always focus on improvement and becoming a better person. And that to me was the start of like self-actualization and being able to do that. So if anyone is getting into it, it's definitely worth just thinking about like being with yourself and allowing whatever thoughts come into your head to be there, experience them, and know that you can control those things. And the more you can experience it, the more you're comfortable with it, then the more you can control it. And then just continue to question things and never thinking that where you're at now is where you should be. But if you can question it and come back to like you're in a good spot, then you're in a good spot. You don't have to keep questioning that type of stuff.
Yeah, I like the idea of flipping your personal beliefs upside down and looking at it from a completely different perspective and like having a debate. Like, I believe this and you believe the complete opposite, and having that debate with you in your own head,
right?
To try to figure out, is this really, that can be deep, man. That can fuck somebody's head, But I think it could be extremely productive. It's not something that I've ever thought about.
Right.
I may have played around with it, here and there, with certain big issues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or even on some smaller issues, I'm never really afraid to get in any debate with anybody about anything. But as soon as I get to a point where I start questioning what I'm saying, then maybe that debate should be over.
Yeah, for sure.
Because now we just ran into something maybe I don't really super believe about, which is interesting. But I didn't know you were still studying now. You were still in school now. So what are you studying right now?
In pursuit of my master's, and eventually want to get my PhD in exercise science or human performance or whatever the classification is for the college that I'll be at.
With the end goal of
I want to teach and do research.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One question that Wendler and I got tossed, and it came up on the sheets here, is a degree in exercise science and nutrition, because that's what mine's in, is it worth it?
Yeah.
So what would be your answer to that?
My answer would be, if it's something that you love to do, then why not continue your education and do it? It opens the doors for so many opportunities to network, to intern, that you won't get without it. Do you learn a lot through your first 4 years of school? No, but if you go to a good school that has a good program, you can intern with that school the whole time and start to build that network that you wouldn't be able to get any other way besides being in school. And then I think just having a fundamental base of anatomy, physiology, and biology and stuff like that, I think is extremely important. If you can self-teach yourself, then that's great, but not many people have that type of discipline to open up an anatomy, physiology book and learn everything. So I think the practicality of going to school is really useful if you can afford it. I say school is always good, but I come with the caveat of my school is paid for by the military, so I have no debt. They're actually paying for my grad school as well, so it's hard for me to justify racking up that kind of debt, knowing that the degree you're going to get is not really relevant to actually being great at your job or being able to get a high-paying job. You don't make a lot of money within the industry, and you learn more by teaching and being under the bar than you will at school. But if your passion is to learn, then you should always pursue that.
You bring up a good point that I haven't brought up, and I didn't really even think about until you said that, is, I still, for my own education now, business-wise mostly is where it is, I still read, training and research and stuff like that Serrano sends me crap all the time. So
yeah,
I'm
got
never
a person that does the same thing.
Yeah, I'm never at a loss of having things to read. And I subscribe to all the different summaries. I think there's 4 of them, that get sent out every single month. So that's part of my daily reading, just because I like it. It's just something that I really love. But the textbooks for business are one thing, but if I was to go and buy, Nutrition 101 or even a 200 level nutrition course, you got to get into like nutritional biochem before it really becomes something that it's a struggle to really think about.
Yep.
But the anatomy, the physiology, things like that's going to be a hard read for a lot of people just out of high school that don't know what's going on.
Right.
There's a lot of, I don't want to say they're easy courses, but there's a lot of courses they probably could buy the textbook and kind of make the way through that. I still think that foundation of the entry level 100, 200 level courses, just health, just basic digestion.
Yeah.
What happens to a protein molecule when it hits your mouth and digests all the way through until it's completely digested.
Yeah.
How that actually breaks down.
Right.
If you just learn that process, then all of a sudden a lot of your bullshit detector becomes way better.
Right.
And when you're relying just on, articles and ebooks, to be able to teach you, they're not going to be there. Nobody spends time writing ebooks on the Krebs cycle.
Yeah, it's not happening.
But in college, we've all, I was probably taught it 800 times. It's like every freaking class. Here we go again.
Yeah,
and it's the one damn thing you just hate, having to go back through again.
Yeah,
and I was, powerlifting all the way through college and all the other kind of stuff. So I knew sitting in class, the professor, when we got to the strength training thing, he didn't have a fucking idea what he was talking about. There's no doubt in my mind he was just completely clueless.
Right.
Just no doubt at all. I just kept my mouth shut and just, did what I had to do. But when they got to, aerobic conditioning and metabolic equivalent training, and then it was like, fuck, I don't know this. But then again, I didn't give a fuck either. So, it was a struggle through. But the takeaway from it is your bullshit detector goes off way faster. So if you go to a conference or if you're listening to a webinar or even a podcast, and you hear something immediately, if you have a degree in exercise science or nutrition, it's just like bullshit.
Yeah.
Then as soon as you know something that's so fundamental is bullshit, everything else that follows,
not even listening.
It's just turn it off.
Yeah.
You're done. You know, and I think that's lost. But I also fall back onto the caveat of exactly what you said, the cost benefit ratio. And that's something that I don't know what the solution to that is, because the industry isn't going to pay more. It's probably going to pay less, over a period of time. And college educations are just going to keep increasing in cost. Now, who knows if trade schools will start picking, who knows what the future is, but, technology is increasing, things are increasing, so it will work its way out. So I think if we were both to agree on the answer on this, I would say that we would say that it's worth it as long as you can afford it. Yeah. If you have to really go into deep debt for it, then I would really seriously think about what you want to do with your future. Right.
And also, too, on top of that, like if you are going to invest the money, because this is what I see a lot with a lot of the kids going to school these days, is they'll just go to the closest school to them, right? So if you're going to spend $30,000, $40,000 on a school, try to find one that's going to pique your interest or suit your needs. So I got lucky at Florida Atlantic. I actually had a professor who was a powerlifter, Dr. Patrick Jacobs. And he was a powerlifter, and he taught 5 or 6 classes, and it was the best thing in the world.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, and you can find that. You just go to Google Scholar and type in the stuff that you enjoy reading about and see who's doing the research on it, and then that professor is the one that's going to be teaching those classes. So then you invest and go into the school that's actually going to get the most out of it. Like, you get what you put into it. You can go to college and pay $30,000 and get so much more out of it if you put the work in. Now, if you just show up to class and, never talk to the professors, never talk to any of your students, don't network, don't talk to the strength and conditioning coaches, you just do your A's and B's and get out of there, then you're wasting your money. But if you go into the mindset of like, this is my opportunity to network, this is my opportunity to learn from people that I respect and they're doing the research that I want to do, then you can learn a lot from it, because there'll be days where I'd go in and sit down with Professor Jacobs and talk to him for like 2 hours about strength training. It was like a private class. So if you put in you'll get what you put into it. And if you're going to invest that kind of money, definitely don't be that person where you just show up to class and that's all that matters, because it doesn't.
Yeah. Now, after graduation, you opened the gym. So I'm going to kind of skip through that part, because how long did you have the gym there in Florida?
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
Now we'll touch on that a little bit. What did you learn there that you wouldn't do again in those 4 years of opening the gym and having the gym for the 4 years?
I thought after the 4 years, I learned that I would never want to open up a gym again.
Yeah.
But here I am with another gym.
Yeah.
I learned that you can build your gym off the people you want to build it off of. And the first gym I had, it was built mostly through boot camps and like training your moms and your dads and stuff, which it has its reward for people that enjoy doing that stuff. I didn't. What it did for me was having those people allowed me to train high school kids and athletes for free that couldn't afford it. And then that's what I love to do. So it taught me that if you're going to do things just for money and not for actually love or passion, it's not going to last very long. I was making 6 figures on that gym running boot camps, but I fucking hated it because it wasn't the people that I enjoyed training. I enjoyed training athletes at the time, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. I drove up to DeFranco's for like a couple weeks, picked his brain, got to train with some NFL Combine guys, saw his facility. I was like, all right, that's what I want to do, and I developed that over the 4 years at that gym. But because the majority of the people, and also I went through a divorce too, so that always like muddies the water and makes it not enjoyable as well. But being able to think about setting up a gym the way you want it to and then making it successful in that endeavor is going to be far more rewarding than just trying to chase money. I'd rather have a gym make $40,000 training powerlifters than have a gym make $120,000, which I was making at the other gym doing boot camps and stuff. It's just not worth it.
What were the years that you had the first gym?
2010 to 2014, I believe.
Okay. So that's coming kind of right off it's still in the realm where most of the education that you would see, online from, YouTubers and stuff that were popular at the time and people in the fitness industry, that was still when all that shit was hot. This is what you have to do. So you're trying to educate yourself, you're trying to learn, and everybody's saying you need to have the boot camps, you need to do this, you need to do this. And it was like, I don't want to put names out of people that were doing it, but it was everybody across the board.
I probably hired the guys that you were going to name
to
help me build it. Yeah.
Exactly. And most of them never had done it themselves. They just taught other people how to do it.
Right.
So it was, I can see how that would happen, where now having, the year separation between and being more self-actualized and being down the path a little bit more, now you realize, that shit ain't right.
Right, exactly.
For some it might be, if that's their DNA, if that's their culture, that's what they should do. But the true path is to work with the people that you love to work with.
Exactly.
And they weren't teaching that,
No.
back. Nobody was, because they couldn't profit on it.
Right.
Because how can they do that? They got this set system that you can do, and it's going to guarantee you, millions of dollars a year and so forth. After that, you went on this this odd journey of either self-actualization or trying to become the best meathead you could become.
Yeah.
Because I see you leaving there and going to Denver.
Yeah.
And what was the pit stop there?
I
should say, who did you go there to train with?
That was like more or less getting away from a bad situation.
Okay.
It wasn't the greatest divorce. I wasn't in a good place, so I just wanted to get away. And Denver just sounded like a beautiful place. It was it's usually one of the ranked, like the fittest city.
Colorado, yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, that sounds like a good fit. But it wasn't. it wasn't a great strength community. It's a very CrossFit community. So I was coaching CrossFit and doing some of that stuff. I did get to meet some really good powerlifters there, but that was just a 3-year kind of running away from Florida and my issues there, and just trying to escape and start fresh and start new. And then from there is when I started to travel just to become a better coach and a better athlete.
Yeah, and that next stop was Dan Green.
Yeah. So
what did you learn from Dan?
Oh, man. Dan is a man of few words.
Oh, yeah.
That's for sure. So he is someone that I learned not so much by talking to him, but just by watching him. And I think that a lot of people, talk too much and don't listen enough and watch. And you can learn a lot. So with Dan, I learned what it takes to be the best. I learned that you have to be a professional and an athlete within this sport to be good at it. And you have to take it very seriously. You have to train really, really hard. So he taught me what hard training was. He taught me what resiliency was, and that's what I learned from him the most. And then fundamentals and technique and programming he's great with, but we didn't really ever get into that too much. But just kind of watching the evolution of how he programmed things going into meets and stuff was very, very cool to see that, because that was the first time I actually saw a breakdown of someone else programming into a meet and doing all those things with the off season and everything else. Beyond that, it was always just self-taught by me and learning things through books and stuff like that. But to see a high-level lifter training athletes and then competing himself was really cool. And then being able to see him compete taught me to not really ever let things affect you. He was one of the most laid-back people you'll ever meet, and although his life could be deemed chaotic with everything he has going on, he never let it phase him. He never let it phase his training, and he always seemed like he was very much in a parasympathetic state and not overly anxious or aroused or anything like that. So learning to just keep calm most of the time, relax, and then turning it on when it needs to be turned on and turning it off and relaxing the rest of the time. But those hours when you're at the gym, you're just in a different mindset. You're ready to train hard.
That's something that I've seen a decrease in lifters that train in groups, right? It may be because they have a program from so-and-so, so they're following their program, and these guys that are training in the gym are doing their own thing, but they don't want to fuck up the program. And I've actually had one guy who does a fairly decent job of writing programs for people online tell me he would rather not have one of his clients train in a group of other powerlifters. And we had a conversation about that, because what a fucking mistake that is.
100%.
And what my path coming up was, I always kind of had to earn my way into the group. So I'd come in the first gym I went into, it's just a 13, 12-year-old kid. So it's trying to, and I was a shy kid, introverted kid. So I wasn't going to walk up and say, "Hey guys, can I work in with you?"
Yeah.
And back then, I don't know if it's that way today, they probably would have said no. So you just stay in your zone and you bust your ass, you do what you got to do until somebody comes over and says, "Hey, you need a spot," or, you develop small rapport, like, "Hey, how you doing?" And then from there, but while that time period was going on, you're watching what they're doing, so I was, even at that age, I'm learning, and I'm not even knowing what I'm learning.
Yeah.
I'm learning, this is basic shit. Like, here's how you load a bar.
Right.
You don't put all the weights on one side, the bar flips on. It's just stupid shit like that. So you learn the basic stuff. And then once I went to college, so I became the strongest lifter in that gym before I went to college. So odd things happen when you become the strongest lifter in a gym, which some are good, but most are bad.
Yeah.
It depends what gym that you're in, but most are, it's a weird situation, because it's just, unless you've been there, I'm not going to bother going and explaining, right. But I'm sure you've been there.
I know exactly what you mean.
It's just like, what the fuck, I don't want to deal with this bullshit. And so you go to a gym where you're not the strongest guy.
Yeah.
But then again, now you're back in the corner again because you don't want to go up, and these are all, national level lifters, and I'm still plugging away trying to get to that level. and say, hey man, can I train with you guys? And it was just kind of like taboo. It's like you had to earn your way in, to the group back then. And it was the same thing. Then I would watch them, and they were at a higher level, and it was like, wow, man, they're not fucking hitting ammonia caps for every set.
Right.
They're resting between sets.
Yeah.
They're not talking about anything except training.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing all these little things, like why they're all grabbing the bar really fucking hard. Like they set the first hand, and it confused the shit out of me for like it really did for like a month. Then they would set the second hand. I'm like, why don't they just grab the bar?
Yeah.
And I'm watching. And then when you finally get in the group, the squeeze the bar, man, dig your hand in there. That's not tight enough. Get your fucking hand in there. And then you're learning by watching. And then even when I got to Westside, the whole dynamic of how the training was changed. That's where it became, you don't sit down between sets when you're doing dynamic work. You stand the fuck up. You sit down, you get yelled at. You can lean on whatever you want, but do not sit down. But you're still watching, how are people approaching the bar? This person approaches the bar way too aggressively. He's gassed. This one, and what we would actually do with some of the guys, if they were over aroused, and they would come for the max effort work, and they would come into there. We said, wait, it's misloaded.
Yeah.
I mean, we would try to throw them off just to get them to stop, back up, and then say, oh man, it's cool. Then they would get back under because they had to learn how to control that emotional state.
Right.
I think that's being lost because people are going in and they're training. They're training alone. They're putting their headphones on. They're in their own little zone, which I get that, man. When I bodybuild train, that's all I want to do.
Yeah.
Is put the fucking headphones on, not worry about anything, not talk to anything, just do my stuff. But if you're trying to be a great lifter, I think you got to get around great lifters, and you may not get in the group right away. It's not anything against you.
Right.
It's just kind of a pecking order type of thing that, and they don't want to waste their time. I mean, to be honest with you.
That's what it is.
It's an investment to work with somebody and help them out. And you don't want to help somebody out for 3-4 weeks and then they disappear. It's a disservice to your training partners because it takes time away from them.
Yeah.
So, but you can still learn just by being in that gym.
Right.
And I think that's a huge thing that you touched on there that people just don't get, man. And
I'm glad you brought that up because it definitely raises a extremely valid point. It's like everything I've done, I've tried to earn the respect of my peers instead of thinking that it was just going to be handed to me. Like, I moved to California to train with Dan and train at his gym, but I didn't expect him to be my training partner right away. Like, I had to earn that right to be there. I had to earn his trust. And nowadays, if you show up to a gym and the person that you want to train with doesn't like spend an hour with you, then you're an asshole all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, man, you got to earn your right for us to devote our time to helping you out. When I moved to Portland, my training partner Sean, he didn't fucking talk to me for like 4 months. And then he was like, all right, you're strong, you show up every day, now I'll start spending time talking to you and getting to know you and become training partners, because I was there every day. I never missed a day, and I never thought like, oh man, he doesn't like me. It was like, I get it, right? Like, you don't want to waste your time, because there's been so many people that have said, hey, I want to train with you, and then they don't last. And it's like, man, I just spent so much time trying to help this person out. And, there's no, if you can't contribute anything to the group, then you shouldn't be in the group.
Yes.
And that's not a that's not a knock on you. You don't want to be a disservice to the group either. So you have to put yourself in their shoes and not always get your feelings hurt when it comes to situations like that.
And it is for the new person coming in, it is a big time investment.
Yeah.
Because now it's not just, if you knew they were coming in and all their technique and form and mental attitude and everything was 100% dialed in, completely different story.
Right.
Never happens.
No, never.
Never happens.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to think of how to word this, because you nailed it by saying you end up being the asshole because you don't want to, because you don't help them out. But
right.
I don't charge people to train out here, and I don't have big groups of people that train out here. But I've kind of tried to make it, I'll watch them for 6 months,
Yeah.
maybe a year, and I'll make sure they don't get hurt.
Right.
Like, I'm going to make sure their technique's solid. They're not going to get hurt, but I'm probably not going to help them with their training at all.
Right.
Until I see that, there's that level of consistency, dedication, what it needs, to be able to total elite or pro. I mean, because I don't do this for a living, I like the higher end lifters, like the gym rat. That's a really good gym rat, and then making them an elite total or a pro total. And then when they get to that level is when to me is when it really gets fun, because then fucking 5 pounds is hard to put on.
Yeah.
All right. And then if you don't, like, you help them out for a meet, and I'm teaching them how to train themselves the whole time, and then it doesn't happen. I mean, you kind of feel like shit, but it's still part of the process.
Oh, yeah.
Then you got to explain that, I don't really suck. You don't really suck. It's just keep knocking away, man. 2 meets from now, you might put 50 pounds on your squat and not know where it came from. Well, it started here, and it takes that time.
But like you said, like, you feel like shit because you've invested that time. And what a lot of people don't understand, and a lot of people in business get it, is like, time is our one resource that, we value the most.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a money thing. Like, you could pay me however much money you want. I still wouldn't want to coach you right away. Like, you have to earn my time, because it's so valuable to me. In those 2 hours of training, now it has to be 2.5 hours. Well, that 30 minutes I'm spending trying to help you out is lost in other businesses or other people that have earned that right,
Mm-hmm.
And until you actually value your own time, you don't really understand how valuable other people's time is for you, So it's more or less thinking about, like, how valuable is your time. And that's one of the things I learned with business, like, how much are you worth per hour? You need to figure that out. And then from there, you can think about the things that are going to pay you that, and not worry about the things that aren't. So if you value your time exponentially more than anyone else does, then that time needs to be earned for that person to get to qualify for it. And it's not anything to do with money or anything to do with anything other than you only have a small amount of time on this planet. Make sure you value it and use it to your best abilities, and not squander it on people that you shouldn't waste it on.
Yeah, I think on the other side of the scale is if there's people that you are helping out,
mm-hmm.
and they are part of that group, they don't know what that value is.
Yeah.
So one of my Instagram posts, there's like 9 of them. They have numbers on them. Somebody asked me, what's it take to come out here and train?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this is going to take a little longer to do than. But I thought it'd be one simple post.
Right.
It's not. I have probably 2 more yet to actually finish. But one of them, I took the rate that I used to charge for personal training 22 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I applied that to the time it takes to actually write the program at the beginning of the week, and then being there with them while they're training for 2 hours or whatever it is, the adjustments that are being made during that time period, the adjustments being made during the week, the time on Saturday and Sunday, which is longer, because they're here longer, and it ended up coming up to like $4,800 a month.
Right.
So,
you ask somebody to pay that, and they're
it's
like,
never
no,
going to happen,
ridiculous.
but that's kind of how it works from there. So that
another thing too that I learned from Dan, it was like the Roger Bannister effect, right? Like, you see someone and what they're capable of, and you think to yourself, he's just the guy. Like, why can't I accomplish these things too? Like, before you see someone squat 800 pounds, you don't think it can ever happen. But when you see it physically and you're there spotting and loading for it, then it's like, all right, he's just another guy. If he's another guy, why can't I do this too? And then that kind of allowed me to think more so in terms of, like, what am I truly capable of? And that allowed me to progress a lot more, because I was able to really think about, like, the standard that I held myself to should be the same standard that Dan holds himself to. I shouldn't think of myself as a 1,600 pound total. I should think of myself as a 2,000 pound total and what I'm capable of. And being able to see Dan do that was like, okay, like, fucking game on. Let's go. Yeah.
So from there you went to Jesse, right?
Yep.
All right. So down there was Selco. So you know Harry Selko?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another Marine.
I got to meet him a few times.
Yeah.
He trains way too early in the morning.
Yeah, he's old school Marine,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
So how did that go there? What did you learn from Jesse? What did you learn from being in that?
Yeah. So what I learned from Jesse was more or less like how to treat people. It wasn't much like X's and O's. I did learn X's and O's from him, but he's genuinely one of the best human beings I've ever met, and he's someone that on a day-to-day basis, like, I strive to be more like.
Mm-hmm.
So he taught me that aspect of things, is like, be a good father, be a good husband. Those are the most important things in his life, and then everything else is just that.
Yeah.
So he taught me how to be a better person, and I can't thank him enough for that and that experience. And then within the realms of training, he taught me to keep an open mind when it comes to things. Dan is very much specificity based driven, and do a lot of work, and if you survive, you'll get really strong, where Jesse's conjugate.
Yeah.
So it allowed me to see success from different approaches, and it always opened my eyes to be like, okay, well, there's so many ways to get stronger. Don't ever get married to one philosophy just because it's worked for you in the past. Try new things out, figure out ways to get better, and learn the concepts of how to get better, not so much the program to get better. And that's one of the things he taught me. And then also the dynamics of the group. Even at Dan's gym, we trained from 5 to 8, and there was like 20 of us. We all trained together. And Jesse's group, he trains from noon to 3, and we all trained together. They did all the same workouts, and I think that because the amount of respect we have for Jesse, we were able to all kind of do the same thing and not question it.
Mm-hmm.
So that played a big role in like how I try to develop my programming at the gym, and making sure that people follow it and train together and stuff like that. But being able to keep an open mind and constantly learn, and not only learn the X's and O's of training, but learn the X's and O's of coaching, being able to read people, being able to talk to people and see how they're feeling, and being able to adjust things on the fly from that is something that I learned from him as well.
So the nonverbal,
yeah,
basically what you learned in the leadership from the military now combined with, the nonverbal were in the military.
Yeah.
The nonverbal is just the reason to jump on their ass for being.
Well, yeah, you don't have a choice in the military.
Yeah. What pulled you to Duffin then?
I just enjoy learning, so I feel like I treat these moves as like an opportunity to educate myself. I treat it like a college experience. I'll give a year or two to develop, and beyond that, I feel like if I can't garnish the amount of information that I need to garnish, then I'm not doing a good job. And then if I stay there too long and I become reliant on that person, then I'm also not becoming a good job as a coach. So I learn as much as I can within that time frame, and then when I feel like my time is up, I go on to the next place or the next person to learn from. And Chris was one of those guys that I thought would be a great addition to learning from, and it was very valuable to learn about the KMS stuff that he does, and the fundamentals of bracing and rooting that I was really never taught, so being able to learn those small, minute fundamentals was huge. And then on top of that, I lucked out and got to meet Sean, my training partner, who I had no clue who he was. Not many people do, but he has a 2,400-pound total. So it's like, all right, well, I know that I'll never be the strongest guy in the gym anymore.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. But then how can I become the training partner that he needs, knowing that there's no one really on this planet that will ever be stronger than him that will train with him, So how can I push him and become a better person to allow him to succeed as well? Because if you go into any group dynamic thinking that it's all about you and what you can get out of it, you're just an asshole. Like, you should be giving back more than you're getting. And that was one of the things that really pushed me to continue to improve and continue to learn and continue to grow as a coach, because I've never helped someone go from 2,300 to 2,400. So I really had to step my game up, not only, my game inside the gym to make sure that, I would talk shit to him, like, hey, if I squat 800 today, you better beat me by 100 pounds or you're a pussy. Like, things like that to keep him motivated. that allowed me to grow as an athlete too, being able to push myself to that level just to kind of stay within striking distance of him so he could push himself to another level.
Then after all this time, 5-6 years maybe,
yeah,
so I'm kind of guessing, the entrepreneurship spirit hit you again. I guess it was kind of still there. You were probably working as a trainer throughout this whole time.
I was doing online coaching.
Okay, the whole time. But you decided to go back and open a gym.
Yeah.
And what was the spark for that?
I just wanted a place to train. That was my own. It wasn't, I knew that with the systems we had in place for the gym, it's not going to pay the bills. But as long as it's sustainable and it's paying for itself and we're able to shoot content out of it and just have a place to call our own to train, and that's all I cared about. Yeah, it wasn't a entirely like entrepreneurial move in terms of like I want this to be an extremely successful business. I just want it to be an entity that I can call my own, that pays for itself, but then I can also pass on what I'm learning to everyone within that group dynamic. Because I've never had a gym where it's just powerlifters that I can program for 100 and something people and to see how they're growing from the programming and what I'm doing. So it gives me a very large pool to select from.
And the test.
Yeah.
You find out what works, what doesn't work. And
exactly.
You can use some people to, be guinea pigs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Other ones not. And then kind of go from there and see what happens from that standpoint. At what point in time did the podcast start?
It just started kind of on a whim. I've done 68 episodes.
What's the name of your podcast?
Beyond the Platform.
Okay.
Yeah. It was one of those things where I was by myself now. I was done traveling because I have my wife, and she's not a traveler. She's never left California, so I didn't want to be selfish and be like, hey, we're going to keep moving so I can keep learning, but obviously I'm doing that again. So I guess I am more selfish than I think, but it was one of those things where I was on my own, but I wanted to continue to learn from high-level lifters. So what better way to do that than to interview them for an hour on a podcast? So it was like a selfish thing. I just wanted to learn from more people, but then also put it out there for everyone else to learn from, and it was never about like trying to monetize or trying to get sponsorships for a podcast. It was just more or less, I want to talk to strength athletes. I want to pick their brains about what goes on beyond the platform, to get there, whether it be psychologically, whether it be training, nutrition, any of the aspects that led them to where they are today, and just learn as much as I can from them, and also to allow me to network and build things up, so that way when I do travel to these meets, I know people, because I'm introverted as well. So if I've interviewed people and still haven't talked to them when I get there, because it was like, I see you, but you're extremely loud and talkative, and I don't really want to be the center of attention, so I'll let you do your thing. So just kind of an outlet for me to continue my education, by reaching out to other lifters, and then also being able to pass that on to everyone else that listens to it.
Out of 60 episodes, and I've looked at the guest list and I was on your podcast, what would be some of the things that you have seen consistent amongst all the lifters and coaches? Because I know we can sit and talk about differences all day long, but there's a lot of consistencies. I like to think to say, I've always said, I should state that everybody probably agrees on 85%. So what are the things that you see consistently across the board?
Yeah, one of the things is they prioritize the things outside of the gym more than the things inside the gym to be successful. So they really take their nutrition seriously. They take their sleep seriously. They treat it like they're an athlete. And that's what I found to be the best amongst the athletes, is they treat it like it's a professional athletic endeavor, like the NFL. They get body work done. They take care of themselves. And then also they always have mentally like a drive that pushes them to where they don't allow excuses to enter in. They just get shit done. And there's a lot of people, that my knee hurts, so I can't train today, or, this hurts. It's like, well, you got to fucking train, or else you're going to start falling behind. And that's what the elite athletes do, for better or worse, right?
Yeah.
Then that, if you don't listen to your body, then then you're kind of fucked too.
Yeah.
But it was those are the two biggest takeaways is, treat your body like you're a professional athlete, and then also don't allow excuses to creep in when it's time to train. It's time to train. You don't think about things outside of that.
And the coaches?
The coaches, I definitely need to get more coaches on. It's mostly athletes.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned.
Well, let's go with the athletes that are also working as trainers and so forth, because they got to balance, like you said, and we spoke before. They got to balance that.
Yeah.
So the ones that actually are good at what they do, because when you're speaking with them, probably before you're speaking with them, if they're actually a good coach or not.
Yeah, for sure.
So the ones that are good, what do you see being the consistencies there?
They have an open mind to continue to learn, and they want the best for their athletes, whatever that entails, whether that is saying, hey, I don't have the answer for you, but I'm going to get it, or hey, I may not be the best fit for you as a coach, here's who I recommend. They're not just chasing after money, or they're not just chasing after whoever. They have a specific people that they target, and they train those people, and if they can't help you out, they go out of their way to make sure that they do the best they can, and they're always trying to learn so that they don't have to pass people on, so that they continue to grow as coaches, and they're not so involved in their brand or philosophy. They're more so just concerned about helping their athletes out.
How long do you think you're going to stay in Portland?
Oh, we're moving next year.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Where are you moving to?
Whatever college I get into.
Okay. So that's for the PhD then?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you thinking, or where are you hoping for?
Right now I've looked at Baylor, USF, OSU, Ohio State University, and East Tennessee.
OSU's strong right now.
Yeah.
The people they have there are, it's a good program right now.
I went and talked to Professor Kramer on Thursday and spent a couple hours with him. He showed me the lab and tell me what they were pursuing, and it's very cool stuff that they have going on. USF is nice because not only does that provide a great college that its main interest is in physique enhancement and powerlifting, but it also, the area, the community, will provide an extremely beneficial learning environment, because you have guys like Dr. Scott Stevenson down there, Ben Bukolski down there, who we got to meet and train with and spend time with. So it's an invaluable learning tool outside of the scope of just school as well.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe my master's down there at USF, and then my PhD somewhere else. That way I'm learning from different professors. Yeah.
And you got places to train both places.
Exactly.
So you've covered those bases as well. Josh, what do we have for questions?
One of them was, what are some key takeaways from last weekend's summit? Was that your first Elite FTS event you went to?
Yeah, it was my first one.
Okay, what did you think? We spoke earlier, and you mentioned that Buddy Morris was somebody that you followed for a while.
Yeah.
What was that like hearing him?
It was a great experience. Like, Buddy's someone that I've always looked up to within this industry. He was one of those strength coaches that everyone talked about when I was coming up and reading stuff. So being able to see him speak, it just was more of an honor than anything. It was like a bucket list check mark. I got to hear Buddy Morris talk, the guy who everyone respects and loves and admires for his knowledge. And it was great to hear him talk about. The first slide he posted was his acknowledgments of who he's learned from, and I think that's extremely valuable to think about as a coach, is like, who's spent the time to help you learn and give you their time, and then acknowledge them for that. Far too many people take credit for the stuff that they invented when nothing's invented anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's way smarter people out there, and for him to know that and then also admit that it says a lot about his character, and that just reiterated how much I respect him and I don't even know him. Yeah.
What are some other takeaways from that event?
One of the biggest takeaways was more of a, what you put into life is what you get out of it, and it takes a lot of hard work, and you can always do more and you can always be more. And that was one of the things, that was one of the key takeaways, was like, I need to get my shit in together, because like, I think I'm busy, but I'm not. JL has 2 20,000 facilities. Allen has multiple things going on. Everyone has so many things going on, and I think that I'm busy. It's like, no, I got to find more time. I got to get better at already what I have in place, you know. So it was very one of those things where it was like a self-check for me. And then also thinking about the impact, like I was telling you, like the impact that you've had on these people, being able to have them come here just because you're here, and the stories that they've told and the impact that you've had on their life made me really want to focus on being more impactful to people and having a bigger part in people's lives and being there more and being less selfish than I am, and making sure that, you know, people are, I'm giving back to more people than they're giving to me, and truly cherishing those moments and those people in my life, and making sure that I'm helping them in any endeavor that I can. And, you know, if I do ever need anything, that they would stand up there and say the great things that they said about you. And that was one of the things where it was like a self-actualization moment where, like, I can be a better person, you know, and I need to be a better person because that's what life is about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those were the two biggest takeaways for me.
So did it meet your expectations, or?
Oh yeah, it definitely did. Like, you know, I told someone, cause we had the breakout sessions, and I was with Dr. Serrano for one, and he spent 30 minutes like kicking my ass, and I was like, that 30 minutes was worth the price of admission for the whole weekend, you know. And there was like multiple 30-minute sessions that made it worth it, and that was the greatest thing about it, was like the little things, you know, made the event come together and made it something special. It wasn't like one particular topic or one particular person, but it was the whole entirety of how it was set up, and how the speakers interacted, and, you know, the small nuances that make things like this special.
Cool, man. Well, glad you liked it. Here's one from the live chat here. It's kind of circle back on your gym. You may have touched upon this. Let me know if you did. But how do you go about implementing a powerlifting base to your gym, getting your clients to buy in?
I mean, they buy in based on the results we have. So if they see the people on the program hitting 50-pound PRs, 60-pound PRs, then they know that it's legit, and that's how you buy in. That's how anyone buys in, is results. You can buy in based off of my reputation, but that doesn't mean shit if I can't produce the results that you need. So everything's results driven in our industry. So if they see the results, they buy in. The more they can improve, the more they'll buy in, the more they'll tell people about it, and then the more it grows. And that's really the premise of, you know, owning a gym, being a personal trainer, is like giving the people what they want, helping them reach their goals.
I think the buy-in is huge, because the bigger the buy-in, the more trust is built.
Yep.
And then the more trust is built, the longer plan can be developed.
Yeah.
You know, because when they come in, you know, you're kind of in a weird position.
Yeah.
That you have to make progress with this person within X period of time, or they're going to leave, just because that's the expectations.
Yeah.
But once you get that buy-in, then it can be more like, okay, you hit this meet, and say it's the U.S. Open, or just use that because it just happened. So you just hit the U.S. Open. Now we're going to focus on this meet next year. So we're going to spend this whole off-season. So you have that buy-in.
Yeah.
You'd never have that buy-in if you just trained them for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
For that meet.
Right.
You know, they'd be like, no, I need this next. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where you know perfectly well their conditioning sucks. There's a lot of things that have to happen.
Right.
Which they need 6 months in the off season to do. But that's one thing about the industry that I've always hated. You know, when I was training people, and even if I was to train people today, I would hate that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, fuck you, unless you're going to buy in for
Right.
5 or 6 meets, I don't want to talk to you.
Well, that's the nice thing about having the gym set up to where it's not my main source of income. Is like, hey, you're new to lifting. You're not gonna have a barbell in your hands or on your back until we can get the fundamentals down. If you don't like that, go somewhere else. Like, I'm trying to help you to where you know how to progress and you know the basic fundamentals. And because it's not a business where I'm focused on making money, I'm allowed to do that. And it allows me to have things set in place the way I want to, so that I can continue to build my reputation as a coach that cares, and not so much as a coach that is just doing things to make money. So it's nice to have that freedom of setting things up the way you want it to, because you're not chasing like, I got to make sure that you sweat and like can't walk for a week because that's what you signed up for. Like, I don't care what you signed up for. You came to the gym because you want to get better. That was your main goal. I'm going to get you there. You just have to trust me. And that comes down to communication with the person as well. So learning to be a better communicator so that you can tell that person, these are the goals of what we're trying to do within this year time frame. You have to trust me to know that you're going to be on the right path. And if you don't like that, then that's fine. We're not the right gym for you, because if you just want to go to the gym and, do a workout till you're crawling on the ground and, can't leave the gym without laying on the ground for 15 minutes with your shirt off, then find a CrossFit gym that'll do that for you, because I'm not willing to risk my reputation that I built over the decade just to satisfy somebody who may not even be around in a week or two, so it's not worth it to me.
Would you say that it's important for an online, I don't even know what to call them, online programmer, because they really don't coach, they really don't train people, but just say someone that does online programming, that they should have experience training people in the real world before they start doing anything online?
I have no clue how you could be an online coach without having real world experience. That blows my mind that people think that they can just do that. Like, how do you fundamentally teach someone how to squat, bench, or deadlift if you've never had to do that in person? Like, that's the whole key concept. Like, how do you adjust things? How do you learn people's, mannerisms? How do you learn nonverbal communication? How do you learn how to talk to someone? How do you learn how to get the most out of someone if you've never done it in person?
You can't.
It's just a way for you to make a quick buck, and that's not fair to the people that are signing up. And for me, I never want to do a disservice for someone that's going to pay me money, that they trust me. And I can't allow someone to trust in me and then fuck them over like that. Because that's what you're doing. If you don't take it seriously, if you've never had your hands on helping someone in a gym.
Yes. And all training, in all honesty, all training comes down to the best guess you can make.
Right.
Let me rephrase that. The best educated guess you can make.
Yeah.
And, with the clients that you have coming in through the door, you may be making, just based upon how they walk in the door, what they look like, what their gait looks like, how they're moving, how they're talking. You may be making 10, 15 different adjustments to the program in your head. Then they start their warm up and you're like, oh shit, this is not good. Then they start getting under the bar and you're like, oh shit. And then they start warming up and it's like, okay, there's 10% coming off the top right there. So there may be 20, 30 different pivot points throughout one training session. And that's with the nonverbal communication, which is 80% of communication or something like that. Yeah. And actually verbal communication and being able to see the warm-ups, where when it's online, you see the last rep after it's happened.
Yeah, you lose all of that.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's after it's happened. It's not like you can start to see the problems on the warm-up sets, start trying to find some kind of verbal cue to be able to correct it and get it to fix. It's after the fact.
Yeah.
And then the only method of communication you're left with is a DM, a text, an email, and maybe a video.
Right.
So I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying it takes somebody with a high skill level of doing it in person because now that best guess is going to be a lot better.
Yeah.
Because they're going to see tendencies, in conversations that you may have with them, or, what the video would look like. And It's like, okay, this typically is a result of somebody not fucking sleeping, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
From that standpoint, where I've always kind of felt exactly the same way, and you had the same exact reaction. My reaction may have been a little bit more astounding than what yours was. Like, what the fuck are you telling me? They can't do that. It's impossible.
No.
But I am one that I do think it is possible for it to get done. But the caveat that really screws it all up, and I'm trying to really focus on, I guess you would say customer education, even though they're not my customers.
Yeah.
They might be, for gear and stuff like that, is for them to be able to make a better choice and a more educated choice, because a beginner, who's only been kind of screwing around in the gym for 6 months or a year, decides they want to do a meet. It doesn't matter who they fucking hire.
Right.
They can give them any program. Just snatch one off the internet. Who cares? Linear periodization from 1970. It doesn't matter, and they're going to make progress.
Right.
They're going to be the greatest trainer in the world. And all they did was puke up some program. Fucking, they could just, as long as they understand, 80% for threes, 70% for fives, 90% for doubles and singles.
Right.
And, they can run the board with it. And the problem I see with that is, and I do understand beginners. This is one of those things where when we first started talking about you want to question your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Where it's like, fuck, the beginner needs to have that time frame where they just figure shit out for themselves.
I agree.
All right. And I think that's really important, but that's not how things work today.
No.
And there are coaches that can help that beginner make a difference, but it shouldn't be by telling them what to do every single time. It should be teaching them how to get there. Where the coach would come in my opinion, when they're, intermediate, say I use the old classification system. So say they're like class 2, and they want to get class 1, masters, elite, they want to move up.
Yeah.
So they've been stuck at whatever they got stuck at. A lot of people typically get stuck if they're really consistent and serious about it. A lot of people get stuck around class 1.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, and the master's class has always kind of fucked me up because it's also like a division.
Right.
It's just like, why is this here? But, to get there, and then it's from there, it's like a simple tiny jump from there to elite. It's like my whole shit suck, good, great thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just a tiny jump, man, from there. But that's when they should have the coach, is to be able to help them with those hurdles. And if they are a beginner, to have a coach that first off knows how to work with beginners, and I think should give them a lot of free time, a lot of latitude, because they should be doing, well, we'll talk about this, but they should be doing a lot of bodybuilding work. They should be doing a lot of other type of work, because, you can't flex bone.
Right.
You got to have muscle and stuff like that. So I think that was one of the other questions. Josh, you got another one there?
Not relating to that, but is that what you're looking for?
No, just, it will come up sooner or later.
This one's kind of for both you guys. This one says, Tony, as a powerlifter and a bodybuilder, what does a typical day look like in terms of diet, timing, and content? And then after that, Dave, we'll get to you. It just says, as a powerlifter and fat dad, what does a typical day look like in terms of diet, timing, and content?
So yeah, for my diet, I have training day macros, and then I have non-training day macros. So it's more of a carb cycling approach, and it's very regimented. I eat probably like 3 or 4 meals a day, just because it's more convenient with my schedule. And then it's just a matter of what season I'm in. So if I'm trying to diet, then obviously the calories will get reduced, and then if I'm trying to gain, the calories get increased. And I don't ever really spend too much time in any type of maintenance phase. It's either gaining or cutting, and just focusing on that. I try to stay on top of things and be as regimented as possible. I eat as much clean food as possible. I do macros, but I don't do the junk macros where you can just, calories a calorie type of deal. I always try to make sure that it's nutrient dense food, and just try to focus on that. And as long as I'm performing well in the gym, then my diet's good. If I'm not performing well, then I adjust my diet. And really, at the end of the day, I'm a power lifter first, and performance is all that matters. So as long as I'm fueled up to train and recover, then that's the most important thing. So keep my protein pretty high, carbs around training. Outside of that, mostly fats and proteins and vegetables, and that's really, it's very, very, very basic, and it doesn't really change much. And then and that's whether it's bodybuilding or powerlifting. Diet stays the same because the goal is the same, and that's to be the best at powerlifting. So it doesn't really change much at all.
And then for you, Dave?
Wait, is the question just diet, or is it the whole?
It was, what does a typical day look like? But it specifically says in terms of diet, timing, and content.
Oh. Well, fuck. Who gives a shit about mine? My diet's not regimented. It's, I guess if you were to take a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being how I would eat if I was still working with Justin Harris, trying to get ready for a bodybuilding show, it's probably 6 or a 7. So it's nowhere near as bad as what people would think it would be based upon all the jokes and shit that I say. But
still heavily gas station oriented?
Nah, sometimes. It depends. My timing is the biggest, if there's anything, if there's an issue. But I also really don't give a shit what I look like, so there's a change there. You know, I do care about how strong I am, but I'm more concerned about work. So, you know, I might eat three meals a day. You know, the first one, just your basic, you know, eggs and Ezekiel bread and oatmeal, just basic shit like that. And then lunch is where I usually have the problem, where I just won't eat.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be working, and I'm in the office from 10:30 until 4, right around there typically each day. Then I'll go home. So that's when my son gets off the bus. And then there's a couple hours in between there. I'll be answering emails and DMs and crap like that. And then training twice a week back here at 6:30. So dinner's whatever we eat as a family for dinner. If you know, the lunch could be the gas station stuff that he's talking about, which could be Subway, you know, something like that. So I'm not too concerned about my diet. Let's just put it that way. And I'm not too concerned about the timing as well as that either. I will say this, that I know for certain. I'm just not willing to change it right now. And that's a conscious decision. You know, if I wanted to, I could, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just being straight up. I'm not eating anywhere near enough.
Yeah.
You know, so I could never, if I wanted to drop weight, which at some point in time I know I have to, the only thing that's keeping me from doing it is I know how much I weigh now, and I know what I should weigh. Yeah. And then I do the math in my head on how much you can lose each week without dropping a lot of, you know, lean body mass. And every time I do that, the only thing that resonates in my mind is fuck. You know, because it's going to be 5 or 6 months.
Right.
But the problem I have with that are my calories are way too low right now. I'd be surprised if they're over 2,500, with the exception of having pizza on Friday night. Yeah. You know, daily. And there's no way I would ever consider trying to start a diet that low.
Oh, you'd be fucked. Yeah.
I would have to spend time reverse dieting.
Yeah.
To get it up to at least 5,000, which just adds even more time.
Right.
And with a reverse diet, for those people that don't know, that's not eating shit. That's the last thing that you want to do, because then you're just going to put on a bunch of fat and water, and it's just, and as soon as you start dieting, then everything that comes off is just going to be the water. And you're going to be like, I just lost 15 pounds. So it's got to be cleaner food, and it just, you know, you just got to work up from the calories that you are really slow, increase your volume a little bit with the training, you know, to get glycogen back in the muscle. And when you're not training, like I don't hardly do any bodybuilding training at all. It's just max effort, dynamic type work at this point in time. And just not getting back into the swing since the last hip replacement. Strength matters though. To me, strength is a big fucking thing. So I put my focus on there, even if it's only training twice a month or 3 times a month. It's going to be fucking heavy, and it's going to be max effort. I'm going to make sure of that, you know, because there's nothing greater than standing up with something heavy, man. It's just,
it's a good feeling.
No, there's nothing better. I mean, it's addicting. So the training that I do is to make sure if I do that and I miss, I don't get hurt.
Yeah.
So that's all my accessory work.
Yeah.
So sometimes it may not be anything. Sometimes it'll be, you know, that, and that's just from a spider bar or yoke bar standpoint. But the reverse dieting standpoint, I think, do you run into a lot of clients that you have this problem with, that their calorie level is so low from the start that you got to how do you bring them up? Because I'll let you answer, because you're the one that does this professionally.
Yeah, if they're coming off a contest where they're lean, then I like to bring them up to more of a baseline approach so that they can get their hormones back. So it'd be like maybe a 5 to 10% increase in trying to get their weight up within that first month. That way their body starts acting normal, their hormones come back in check, and things like that. If it's someone who, kind of like in your instance, where it's just like I'm just under-eaten, but I'm still not in great shape, then it would be more of a slow, methodical approach. That way they don't put on fat, and it would be more or less trying to increase their calories on training day and keeping their calories a little bit lower on non-training days when you don't really need them, and then just continue to build that up. But if it's someone that's really lean, that's done a contest phase, I try to push their calories up faster to hopefully inhibit them from binging, and then also allow them to feel more normal faster. And then from there, you start the more slow, methodical approach to adding in the calories. Because like you said, if you just do that and just add calories for the sake of adding calories, there's a certain threshold that you hit within your off season, right? So if you've gained that weight, say for a guy, they may be gaining 20 pounds in their entire 8 to 10 month, 12 month off season. If you gain that 20 pounds in the first month, well, you're fucked. Like, you got to focus the rest of the 10 months on trying to get that shit off instead of actually making improvements. So you want to make sure you keep that in mind whenever you're doing it. Is like a slow, methodical approach to get those calories back up is going to allow you to push your gaining phases even longer and even harder because you've done it the right way. Doing it the wrong way, you're going to be fighting that whole gain, cut, and you just end up in the same spot a year later, which you see all the time.
Yeah, I've dieted down over the period of my life under 6% calipers, so take that for whatever it's worth, and that's 8 site calipers. And I'm going all the way back to my first bodybuilding show when I was in college, maybe 10 times. And when the reason I like the reverse dieting when there's people in situations like I'm in is most of the older crowd, 35 plus, probably are in this situation.
Yeah.
Really super low calorie days and, terrible days, which they shouldn't have those terrible days. But, maybe once a week. If it's more than once a week, then they need to fix that. But the one thing that I think that they should realize is they will be more successful if they take the time to slowly bring the calorie base up.
Yeah.
And if they do it with the foods they're going to be dieting with. So if they're going to be dieting with lean proteins, chicken breast and fish and, the typical shit.
Yeah.
At some point in time, if they're trying to go under 10%, it's going to become bland and it's going to suck.
Yeah.
But when they're reversing it, then they can have all kinds of shit on top of that.
Yep.
They can have cheese if they want, because they're just trying to bake. And if they do it correctly, the way that I've always done it, then once you get it, you have those however many meals you can do for that day. I'm not like an 8-meal guy. So, to me, it's whatever's really convenient.
Yeah.
So for me, it was 4 meals and maybe a shake before bed. That was convenient. What happens is your base is already built into those 5 meals.
Yep.
All you need to do then is just start taking shit out of each one of those meals. So if it's a 1,000 calorie meal, well then you take the fucking pudding out, you take whatever else out, or the gel, all that crap, and then you're already in the habit of eating the food you're going to need to eat.
Yep.
But you're not killing yourself to do it because you're eating enough, and there's fats in there, and there's enough in there to be able to not feel like you're dying.
Yeah.
And then once it starts flipping, it's just like, okay, just pull this and pull this and pull this and pull this. And for most people, they're not going to ever have to get in any type of carb cycling or anything really fierce like that. But it's still there, because the foods really don't change a whole hell of a lot.
Right.
So,
yeah. Yeah, if it's like a general population person or someone that's just getting into diet, there's no real reason to have carb cycling days or calorie cycling days. It's just keep it as consistent as possible. Consistency is going to build repetitiveness, which is going to build habits. You don't want somebody thinking like, oh, I got to do a day for my max effort day, and then I got to do a day for my dynamic effort day, then I got to do a meal plan for my off days. That's going to fuck people up. Just keep it simple.
I've used the carb cycling for probably the 2 times I went down where I had whatever you would call the best look. I mean, I still can't even say things like that without making myself want to laugh. But when people tell me that they want a carb cycle, my reply is, you have no idea how fucking hard this is to do. Because it's not like if you just eat 5 meals a day and it's the same meals every day, after 2 weeks, you're just going to be used to it. You just change the foods out. This is like, okay, this day is totally different than this day. Like your whole freaking calendar is upside down. And it's freaking hard. And then you have a great day. It's like, man, this was a super high carb day, which you're really lean. And Justin had me on 1,000 grams of carbs. It's like, this day's awesome, except your mouth is bleeding from cereal and all this stuff. Then the next day you get hit with a low day. So your metabolism's just flying, and then you go to the next day and you're like, this sucks.
You're just like hungry all the time.
Yes. What else we got?
We got a good one to end on here would be, Dave, what made you choose Tony for the team? And then after that, we'll have Tony say what it means to be a part of Elite FTS, newly a part.
Yeah. I think Tony applied a few years ago. A lot of people don't really understand how long we've vet a lot of these guys for, because this brand obviously means a lot to me because it's 21 years old. And, when a lot of the people that could be watching this podcast right now may not have even been born when I was answering their first Q&As. Or if they are competing, in their 20s competing, they were in diapers, when I was training at Westside. So I've always made sure, and it was part of an E-Myth philosophy with the Q&A, because when I first had it, it was me. And then I was afraid to let go. Like, I can't have anybody answer because they're coming for what I have to offer. So I had to make sure anybody that I ever brought on the site was either going to answer the question at the same quality that I would, or better, optimally better than what I would. So that vetting out process started really early. And then over a period of years, it just kind of got refined. And then we've tried different things that didn't work out. Some did, some didn't. You kind of figure out how it goes from there. So I think there's only been maybe 130 total team members that we've had, including columnists that we would consider alumni, and that means that they last a year, fulfilling the requirements that are on the agreement. So we don't want to bring in anybody that's going to represent the brand poorly, but that's only part of it. The other part of it is they have to know what they're doing. They have to be not only know what they do. I have a scale on how you can rank trainers, based upon experience, education, who they've mentored under, what they've done themselves. Have they made anybody better than themselves? And so I use that, when we're vetting people out as we go through, and it's like, okay, they're hitting all that criteria. Now the other criteria is, can they convey the message? Can they convey not the message of the company? Well, that is important, but it's the message of, can they actually help somebody? Like, if they go to answer a question, is it going to be so complicated that nobody's going to understand what they're talking about? Can they, if answer like a fourth grader, or if they're challenged, and somebody wants them to answer it at a little bit higher level, can answer it at that higher level. So based upon the role that we put people in, if it's an athlete, then we're not going to expect them to be able to answer, or have a in-depth conversation with somebody with an exercise science degree about exercise science. But they certainly can sit down and talk to them about training, and then understand that and be able to go there. But either way, they can still help. So we were watching you for a while. I mean, years. And as I was telling you the other day is, the problem that we had with Tony, and it's kind of a funny thing, we couldn't find anything fucked up, and I have a statement in powerlifting, we call it OIP, and I got a shirt for it that says OIP, which means only in powerlifting, because like, how many things happen and you're just like, God, man, only in powerlifting does shit like this happen, you know? And there's always something. And now, you know, having this podcast and listening through, I see why. You fucking didn't stay in one place very long.
Yeah.
You know, you're moving around. It's like, now I get it now. I see this, you know, it makes sense. But there was everybody that we talked to always had something good to say about you. Whenever we vetted it out, something's going on with the mic, I think. And so that was the plus. Then there was I think last year we were really close, and then we just decided, you know, we don't want to bring anybody in right now. And it could have been, it might have been the year before that, because it's been a while since we brought anybody on new. I think it was with the merge of the new site. We're like, well, we don't want to do this yet because we got to figure out the flow of the site. Because on the older site, which a lot of people watching this won't even know what I'm talking about, right? You know, on the older site, there was a certain flow that the articles would show what the team member actually knew, and then the training logs would show that they actually walked the walk, and the Q&A would show that they actually cared. So it was a really good fit to be able to showcase what we were looking for, and then to try to replicate that with the site that we have now became complicated because Facebook started. You know, and social media started, and our Q&A kind of was like a social media kind of, you know, not really, but kind of. We never had a forum, you know, we always avoided that shit like the plague. And so then it took us a while to kind of get a grasp on how to get the content out to the people, but at the same time being able to showcase the people that are on the team as being professionals at what they do. I'm always afraid to use the word expert because it's thrown around way too. Actually, the word expert almost makes you sound like an idiot anymore. You know, being professional at what you do, you know, is what it is. So that's what it was. And with the funny thing with this is, you were on the short list, and it was pretty much a done deal, right? Yeah. And I wanted to wait and not announce anybody until Ann. Yeah. Because Ann had a really cool story.
Amazing story, yeah.
And I knew she was coming to the seminar. And I'm like, we're going to do this, and this is going to be the launch. Then we'll start pulling in the other people. Yeah. And then a couple of days beforehand, I see your name on the roster. I'm like, shit, you know, how am I going to do this? I said, we can do this at the seminar. We should do this at the seminar, but how can I do this? I can't do it like after Ann's story because that's so anticlimactic. Right. If I do it before, then it just kind of worked out because I knew at the restaurant we were going to do it regardless, one way or another. And then I asked Joe, I'm like, man, do you know Tony? He's like, yeah, I know who Tony is. I'm like, here, you can do this. And I thought he was going to tell a little bit better story, but he didn't. And
Joe's Joe.
Yeah, you did. So, and it was really cool. I like when we bring people on, so especially really good people like yourself. So it was a good moment. So that's why. Now, I mean, that's. Keep in mind, look through everything that we talked about, guys. Look at the education, look at the path, look at the journey, look at the people that he's learned from, look at the caliber of lifter he is. And we didn't even get into bodybuilding and the dieting and that whole aspect
and
as
what
well.
People say about him.
Yeah. And then, so your turn, I suppose.
Yeah, so what does that mean to you?
Oh, man. It's one of those things where it's like, it's kind of hard to put into words, which is, you know, something that I'm not too graceful with to begin with. But, you know, Elite FTS to me was something that started my process into my passion. You know, if it wasn't for Elite FTS, if it wasn't for Joe DeFranco, I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing now. So to think about a company gave me the ability to find my passion and to give me something to pursue bigger than myself for the rest of my life. Like, now that I'm a part of it, it's so exponentially more than I can ever put into words of what it means to me, because it's given me my life that I have now. So I don't know how to put that into words, but all I can say is that if it wasn't for Elite FTS, it probably wouldn't be a Tony Montgomery powerlifter, strength coach, or anything else. It would have been a completely different trajectory. So the gratitude and the honor that I have for being on the team is something that means the world to me, you know, and it's something that I hope to repay as much as I can, and hopefully be able to guide people along that same path and same journey that you guys provided for me with the free content that you did, and all the articles and all the great athletes that you brought on, and, you know, the inspiration to find a passion and pursue it with everything you have is something that I've always found to be extremely important. And I learned that from you guys and what you preach. So that's kind of, I guess, the best way I can put it into words, but that's what it means to me. It's given me my life that I have now.
Yeah,
so
I appreciate that. Thank you. You good? That was good. I couldn't see the stream.